CBC management doubles down after Tara Henley's expose of their weird race and sex checklist that they put all guest contributors and even men on the street interviews through. I got the internal emails to show you today. Apparently, CBC plans to do more of the same thing that continues to drive their dwindling viewership away. Bold strategy. Let's see if it works out.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Today's story is a follow-up to a previous story I did about a month or so ago on Tara Henley's unceremonious exit from the CBC. You see, Henley had complained in a Substack article published January 3rd that one of the main reasons she was leaving CBC was that the state broadcaster had this weird focus on diversity just for the sake of it, even when it didn't matter to the story. Look at this. To work at the CBC in the current climate is to embrace cognitive dissonance and to abandon journalistic integrity. It is to sign on enthusiastically to a radical political agenda that originated on Ivy League campuses in the United States and spread through American social media platforms that monetize outrage and stoke societal divisions. It is to pretend that the woke worldview is near universal, even if it is far from popular with those you know and speak to and interview and read. To work at the CBC now is to accept the idea that race is the most significant thing about a person and that some races are more relevant to the public conversation than others. It is in my newsroom to fill out racial profile forms for every guest you book, to actively book more people of some races and less of others. We filed for access to information to get our hot little hands on that exact document that Henley alluded to in her article. And it's gross. It's a race and sex checklist that journalists would use to categorize interview subjects, panelists, experts, and even random people on the street offering their opinions to the CBC. And this weird demographic social justice checklist had to be done even if none of the demography details were relevant to the topic at hand. Now, we published that document in full. I'll link to it in the written article accompanying this video on the rebelnews.com website so you can see it for yourself. Don't bother taking my word for it. So we got our hands on the CBC race and sex document, but then we wanted to know what CBC thought about Henley telling the world about their creepy little checklist. I mean, think about it. Did the guests even know that they were being slotted into these little diversity buckets behind the scenes at CBC, being judged on their race and their gender, as opposed to what they actually had to contribute to the story? Did CBC even care? Did they think maybe this is a moment of reflection given the firestorm Henley's article caused online? Did CBC think for a minute, maybe we're getting this wrong? Maybe we're being weirdos? Of course not, because I filed for access to information about CBC's internal communications to their staff about their little racial sexual demography project being revealed to the public who pay for it all. Now, we're only able to do this important work through your generous donations to a special access to information and research funding website, rebelinvestigates.com. So thank you to all of you who make my work possible. Okay, let's take a look at these documents. It's titled Some Journalism Notes as we begin the new year, and it's from Brody Fenlon. He's the editor-in-chief and executive director of Daily News at CBC News, and he puts his pronouns in his email sign-off because naturally he did. He does my job at CBC. Now, what's interesting here is CBC gave me a bunch of other nonsense I really don't care about, like Bob McEwen getting the Order of Canada. Who cares? And some books and articles that Brody Fenlon recommends. Again, who cares? How he enjoyed John Carreyrou's podcast about Elizabeth Holmes in the Theranos trial. I did too, but again, who cares? But they redact the things that I may have considered interesting, like how CBC plans to cover climate change. You can see that. It's completely redacted. Or how they plan to approach COVID reporting. Also completely redacted. But they left me section 3. These are Fenlon's notes on inclusion, which touch on Henley's article. Let's go through it. I wanted to address a piece published yesterday by a former CBC employee, which made waves on Twitter and was picked up, amplified, and republished by the usual suspects. Now, I like to think that I'm a usual suspect here. Anyway, let's keep going. I'm sorry someone felt that it was necessary to disparage and discredit the work of so many of her colleagues who are building a more inclusive, more representative, and more relevant CBC. Her attack on the content tracking pilot, that's what they internally call their weird race and sex questionnaire, which I celebrated in an editor's blog earlier this year, was particularly unfair and disingenuous. As you know, this important work is about being more representative of the population of our country. Okay, but again, what if it has nothing to do with the content of the story? It's just for diversity and not for relevance. Let's go on. I want you to know that Susan Marietti, Kathy Perry, and the entire leadership team of our division and I are 100% behind all the efforts to broaden and deepen our journalism by bringing more voices and perspectives to our stories. Except they don't mean broadening political perspectives to include those of conservatives, and they don't mean bringing more non-liberal voices to the table to be heard. They literally mean visual diversity, which I think might actually be racism. Anyway, this last little bit is pretty self-unaware. This work is mission critical to our success. No, not balanced journalism being mission critical to your success, but just shoehorning social justice into everything. That's what matters to these people. Mission critical. Anyway, let's go on. This work is mission critical to our success, to our relevance, and to our very survival in a changing Canada. I would suggest it's actually the reason nobody watches CBC anymore, and it remains a statistical rounding error of TV viewership in a world where everything is on demand. Nobody is choosing CBC no matter how hard they try, because they don't do the news. They do their views, which is fine. But not only are Canadians not choosing the CBC, they don't want to pay for it anymore. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Now, unlike the bloated, social justice-obsessed CBC, we rely on the willing support of our viewers at home to do the work that we do. Actually, this story was made possible through your generous crowdfunding donations. If you'd like to support my access to information work, please consider making a donation at a special website, rebelinvestigates.com.